Welcome back to Blue M Animations, to our tower defense development series. In our previous episode, we discussed weapon selection and coding. Today, we'll continue building our tower defense game in Unity by implementing the creation of weapons in nodes and introducing a money manager system to add a strategic element to our gameplay. Let's get started. When implementing the code to create our weapons, we first need to import or create a game object where we will be placing our weapons. You can download this game object in the link in the description. After importing it to the desired folder, we can create new materials and apply them to it. After that, we'll need to move or drag this new node to our Prefabs folder. And we can change the name of the node to grass if we intend to have different types of nodes, like sand or snow. Let's not forget to add a box collider component. This will be important for us to be able to select and interact with the node. And now, let's implement the creation of weapons in our nodes. We'll start by creating a new script called node. We'll start by creating a new variable called weapon. And then, we need to call our weapon system script by writing private weapon system and giving it a name because it's also a variable. Our void start will be important to call that script once we start the game. And we'll use the find object of type for it. We'll now create an onMouseDown function, but leave it empty, just for now. Our main function will be a public void, and we can call it createWeapon. We will instantiate our weapon, and it will be in the same position as the node. Plus, we need a new vector3, and change the y value, otherwise, we would be instantiating our weapon in the center of the node. And back to the onMouseDown function, we can now call our createWeapon function. To make sure we are getting the right weapon, we'll need to create a void update, and inside, say that our weapon is equal to the weapon to build, in the weapon system script. Let's test what we have done. We just need to apply the new script to our game object. We can select the weapon we want to build, and if we click on the node, we are able to create a new weapon. We only have two problems. One is the weapon is too big, and the other is, if we continue clicking the node, we will be creating more weapons. Let's fix that. We'll start by dragging one of our weapons prefab to the hierarchy, and all we need to do here is to scale the weapon game object to our desired value. We can also position the weapon to the right Y value. Now, we can go to our node script, and the first thing to do is to create a new vector3 variable for the scale. We can then go back to Unity and copy one of the axis values of the scale. In this case, all the values for the x, y, and z axis are the same. After that, when we are creating our weapon, we need to say that the local scale of the weapon will be equal to the new scale we just created. We can then go to Unity, copy the Y position value, and change it in the code. We can now delete the weapon in the hierarchy and test our game. Perfect, it's working. The last step before we go into our money manager is to make sure we don't create more than one weapon in the same node. If you duplicate the node and move it, and if you then play the game, you will see that you can create multiple weapons, and that's not good. To fix it is quite simple. We'll create a private bool called hasWeapon, and we say that is false. Then, when we create a weapon, we say hasWeapon equals true. And the last thing is, when we click the node, we want to say that if hasWeapon will simple return, and not build the weapon. Perfect, it's working. For our money management, we'll start by creating an empty game object called money. Then, we can create a text that will be responsible for showing the money that we have. And the last thing here is to create a new C# script. We can call it Money Manager. Don't forget to apply it to the game object we created before. In our code, we want to create a variable that will be our money. It can be an int or float if you want to have decimal numbers. Then, we need to make a reference to our text, so we need to say that we are using Text Mesh Pro first, and after, we can create a new variable. Finally, in our void start, we need to convert our money value into text using toString. Here, we can also say that our money, in the beginning of the level, will be 200. Back in Unity, we need to attach our text to the variable in the money script. If we now play start, we should be able to see it working. Let's add a cost to our weapons now, and make sure we are subtracting from our Money Manager script every time we build a weapon. We'll create an int variable, and in the selecting function we'll define the weapon cost. Feel free to change the values as you like. In our node script, we'll start by calling our Money Manager script. We need to create the variable and call it in the start method. Now, we need to create a new variable that will be the same as the weapon to build cost, in the weapon system script. And the code that will allow us to subtract is this. We'll say that our player money is equal to the player money minus the weapon cost. If we now play the game, we should be able to see it working. The last thing to do now is to create a void update for our text. Next, we need to go to the weapon system script and call the Money Manager script. We'll also create another variable to connect to the player money. Then, all we need is to say that current money is equal to the player money, and we'll then create the if functions. We'll say that if our money is less or equal to 99, and our base weapon is selected, then our weapon is to build is null, because we don't have enough money. And we just need to copy this function and change its values. And that concludes the second episode of our tower defense game development series. In the next episode, we'll focus on enemy spawning and pathfinding. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with any questions or suggestions you may have. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next episode.